everybody. My name is Ryan Desmond. I'm the co-founder of CodingNomads, and I'm here today for one of our first tech talks with Mike Driscoll. Mike is a Python author and content creator. He's written several books, such as Python 101, 201, and several others that are all available on Amazon. He's also a content creator for Real Python, and he runs his own blog, mouseversuspython.com. Thank you. We're pleased to have you here today, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, Mike, tell us a little bit about what we're going to chat about today.
All right, so I'm going to present a cross-platform GUI toolkit application that I'm going to create with wxPython. And you'll just learn how to create an image viewer with this project, and then you'll be able to run the same code across 3 different platforms.
Nice. We'll be using wxPython, and in general, what is the wxPython library used for?
It is used primarily for desktop applications.
Okay.
So I use it personally for like internal projects at work that different developers will use. But some people have created like, I wouldn't call it commercial, but open source programming editors like Edetra with wxPython and several others that you can go find online.
Nice. Using Python to create desktop applications, and wxPython basically natively works across Linux, Mac, Windows, etc. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Sweet. Any other contextual information you want to give us about what we're going to work on before we just go ahead and dive in?
I'd just like to mention that the reason we're making an image viewer is it's easy to demo because it looks cool. You get to see your own images with it. Mm-hmm. But in a real world context, you'd probably use images to, you'd use this toolkit to like load up a database and view images in the database. You might use it to just like visualize what images that you might want to edit them later with Pillow, which is a Python imaging library.
Right.
You could use this code in conjunction with that to edit your images.
Nice.
Or you could create a screensaver type app with this code.
Cool.
Well, let's get started. So the wxPython package does not come with the Python library itself, so you'll have to go out and install it. The typical way to do that is to do like pip install wxPython. So if you have pip handy, you do pip install wxPython, or you might have multiple Pythons installed. So you could do something else. Let me clear this out. So if I have Python 3.8, you might do Python -m pip install wxPython, and then it'll run through and it'll install that package for you. I have noticed on Linux that occasionally not everything that is needed by wxPython is installed by default, and if you run into issues on Linux, you should go check out the wxPython GitHub page because it lists what prerequisites you might have to install.
Nice, thanks for the tip. And then, so is it important that you get the right version of wxPython for the version of Python that you plan to run the application in, for instance?
No. So if I run this, it'll install wxPython 4.1.
Okay.
It'll go out and pick whatever version is appropriate for the Python 3 version that you're installing it to.
Okay.
But pip will do all the magic for you.
Gotta love pip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not going to go through that install process because it does take a little bit of time and I don't want to bore you. So
no problem.
All right, so to get started, we will import wx, and I'll just create a quick frame. The frame is the main piece that creates your window frame, so to speak. And to do that, you just have to subclass wx frame, and then override its constructor. Let's see, and then I've only recently started using super like I'm supposed to, but you don't. Super just kind of helps with subclasses. You don't really have to worry about how it works under the covers, though. We'll call this an image viewer. So this code here is subclassing the frame, and we're giving the frame a title, which will show up kind of like how you see the title in your regular apps. It'll say like Chrome or whatever. Right. Ours will say image viewer. And then you need to show it to your user. So you just say self.show. which is a method from the frame class. And then we'll just run this quick to make sure I didn't mess anything up. So down here, you have to create an instance of the app class, wx.app. Redirect equals false. So if you set it to true, anything that goes to standard out will appear in a separate window. Most of the time you don't want that, especially if you're trying to give this application to the users. They don't want to see all of your messy debug information. So usually just set it to false. And the frame equals main frame. That will instantiate our frame up here. And then we have a main loop, which is our event loop. Now an event loop just basically waits for the user to do something. So like in my IDE here, which is Wing IDE, it's waiting for me to do something too, like to type or to hit a button. So it's how its events work. So we're going to use wxPython's event loop. So let's try running this and see if it pops up a window. Awesome. Nice. So now we have an image viewer that's a blank slate. Great. So the next step is to create a panel. Now you don't have to have a panel, but I have found that if you don't have it, you will have some problems later on. So I always recommend using a panel. The panel is basically a way to contain code, but it also gives wxPython the right to look and feel for your code. So what I mean by that is if you leave the panel off and you like load this on Windows, that frame that you saw earlier will look like a really dark gray instead of a regular gray. And it looks kind of weird on Windows if you don't have it. The other problem is that if you don't have a panel, you can't tab between controls. So if you have like a bunch of text widgets on there, you won't be able to actually tab through them correctly. It just ignores the tab command completely because you don't have one.
And so was this something that you just learned through trial and error, or is like how would, other than trial and error and practice, how would somebody who's just getting started with wxPython kind of learn some of those intricacies?
When it comes to the panels part, you will learn that just by looking at a lot of code. Really. Okay. I don't think it mentions it in the documentation that panels are required for that, but I think it does mention that if you want to enable tabbing to work correctly, you do have to go find that particular web page, and it'll say at least that part of it. But the look and feel part, I think I actually read that in wxPython in Action, which is a book by Robin Dunn, the creator of wxPython. Okay. I'm pretty sure that's where I saw that originally.
One other quick question, sorry to interrupt. On line 17, when you say, or now 18, when you say frame equal main frame, what's that doing right there? Because I see how app is being used, app.main loop and app equals wx.app, but what's the frame doing there?
If you like remove this code, it'll basically hide the frame, so the frame won't even show up because it never gets run. You have to instantiate your frame, and then once it's instantiated, it will show it. And since it's after the app call, wxPython uses some magic underneath to know that you're running at least one widget.
Got it.
Which is a top level widget, I should say. So wx frame is a top level widget. There's a wx window at the top level widget. It looks for an instance of one of those, and if it sees it, then that becomes the main top level window.
Got it. Yeah, I was missing that the name of your class there was mainframe, so that makes more sense. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, you have to instantiate that. Yep. Okay, let's add the panel to the frame. So to do that, you instantiate your image panel and you give it a parent, which in this case is the main frame, and you pass that along. That's why we have a parent parameter up here. And I think everything should just work at that point. You won't really be able to see any difference when I run this. It should still look pretty much the same, unless you're on Windows, and you'll see that this goes from a dark gray to a regular gray. Okay. So far, we have a very boring application. Let's make this more interesting. I have discovered through trial and error that if you don't set a max size for your image, you can end up having a bad time because, nowadays, even cell phones take images that are higher resolution than most computers can actually display. And so if you don't set a max size or how big you want it to be, sometimes it'll push the window controls outside of your screen, and you can't close your app very easily unless you know like the keyboard shortcut or something.
Right.
So I always set a max size. 240 is probably too small. If you have lots of time, there are ways to ask wxPython what the size of your screen is and have it calculate that based on the size of your screen, which would be kind of fun to do later on. So if you want to go do that as like a side project, you totally could do that. So I think this image is what will load up any images that you care about into wxPython land. And we'll just give it a generic size because right now it's just going to be a blank image. We haven't loaded anything yet. Then we need a control to hold the image. So this isn't actually a control that holds it, it just kind of holds it in memory, so to speak. The one that is shown to the user is called a bitmap. So wx.static bitmap. We add it to the panel. Here, this is making static bitmap a child of the panel.
Okay.
And we don't, let's see, we need to say bitmap equals image, I believe. Oh no, bitmap image. There we go. All right, let's add a browse button so we can go find some images we can use. Most of the time, the widget names are pretty self-explanatory. So wx.button for a button, static bitmap for a bitmap. I don't know why I put that extra parenthesis in there. Okay. And let's skip binding it for now. We'll also create a text control to hold the path to the chosen image that we want to load. So we'll make it 200 in wide, and you can default the height by passing in a -1. And so let's see how ugly this is. All right. So we run this, and we're like, what the heck? My code looks really weird. What's going on here? Well, this dark square here is our static bitmap. It's empty. It's 240 by 240. And it's loaded first because it's the first widget in our panel. Then it loads the button, which you can kind of see under here. And then it loads the text control. And since we didn't tell any of these widgets where to position themselves, they all get stacked up in the top left corner.
Right.
So let's go ahead and fix that and make that look a little bit better. Now, all the widgets in Python, wxPython, you can pass absolute positioning to and have them go on a pixel by pixel positioning coordinate system. I don't like doing that because if you were to resize your widget or your frame, so to speak, if I make this bigger or smaller, the widgets won't stretch or anything, they'll just stay static. So I don't recommend doing that. Instead, I recommend using sizers. All right, whoops, can't type. So I'll call this main sizer, and we'll get a box sizer. There's a whole bunch of different types of sizers you can use. Most of the time, box sizers will get you what you want, but you have to use more of them. So that's like a grid sizer and some other ones like convenience sizers. But this will work. So these sizers will hold other widgets and other sizers and help you orient them the way you want them to be oriented. So let's add the image control to our main sizer. And as you add them to the sizer, you'll add them either vertically, one starting at the top, and then next one underneath it, next one underneath it, or you can set it horizontally, then it'll add it from left to right across your screen.
Okay.
So we'll add this one. 0, this is just a flag that you don't need to worry about too much. So I'm not going to explain every little thing, but So here we have, I know, I guess I will explain this. So add takes your widget, the proportion of the widget should be at, the pixel border, so you can have all sides on the widget. So you can have right, left, bottom, top, or mix them up, and then the border in pixels. Let's make an H sizer, add a couple controls. We'll add the browse button to that one. So we're gonna put the browse button next to the text control. That helps visualize it at all. Do that. And then we'll add self.photo text. And then we'll add the main sizer, or the H sizer to the main sizer. All right. Let's see what it looks like now. Oh, wait. Before I can run that, I have to tell the panel what to do. So you have to apply the sizer to the top level widget, which in this case is the panel. So that's what we're in right now. So we say self. And we'll see how this looks. Should look a little bit better now. And I passed something incorrectly. What did I do? Oh, not main size. I gotta pass it the sizer, not itself. Okay, let's try that again. All right, so while they're not stacked anymore, but some of them are kind of hidden. And you can see this one's kind of stretched out farther than I want it to be. So we can fix that by saying main sizer dot fit, and we'll fit it to the parent, which is the frame. And we'll call layout on it at the end, which will just kind of tell the panel to relay out itself, lay out all the widgets again. So now when we run it, we still got this thing a little bit too long. That's why, because I set it to 200.
Mm-hmm.
We can tweak that, but for now, I think it looks okay.
Yeah.
The button doesn't do anything. This thing doesn't do anything. So let's go ahead and fix that. Let's create a function. Is this making sense so far, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of new stuff with the sizers and adding the sizers and stuff like that. But I'm currently suspending my disbelief.
Yep, I hear you. All right, so we'll say on browse. That way we know this is going to get called. And up here, where we have the browse button up on line 12, we need to tell it to do something. So to make a widget accept events, you use the bind method, and you bind it to a particular event, in this case, event button, and then you tell it what to call when it's clicked. So in this case, we want to call on browse. So now we should get, this button should do something. So yeah, it prints out the standard out that it's doing something,
Right.
but it's not doing anything real useful. All right, so the next step is we want to only open up image files. And to keep things simple, we'll make it just JPEG files. So to do that, you have to create kind of this weird syntax that tells wxPython what you want to accept. So we want JPEG, and we want to say star.jpg. And this one has a little bit of trial and error, especially if you want to add multiple file types. You have to go look up the documentation to get this quite the way you want it, because it's a little annoying.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now we want to show file dialog to the user. The dialog doesn't need a parent because we want it to show modally, which means show up on top of our program and not let us interact with the program until we dismiss the dialog. So let's say we want to choose a file. We'll set the wildcard equal to wildcard. And I think we need to tell it what style to use. So the different kinds of styles. We want the open file dialog, but you could also have a save dialog if you wanted instead, as an ID save, as a print dialog, all built in. You just tell it which ID you want. And then we do it as a dialog. Dialog.showModal is where you show it to the user. And we're going to say if the user hits the OK button, which we're going to see here in a minute, then we will grab the value from the dialog that the user has chosen. So let's do this. Here we have dialog get path, which will be whatever the user has chosen. It'll grab that, and then it'll pass that path to our text control and set it to that value. So now we have a way to kind of get a handle on it.
Mm-hmm.
See if this works the way we want it to work. All right, well, now we have a browse button that we can choose files from. Just choose something random. But it doesn't load up in here, it just updates my text control box.
Okay.
All right, so the last piece that we need to do is figure out how to load up stuff in that image control. So I like to put that in its own function. We'll just call it load image. And we'll grab the file path, which is now equal to our photo control get value instead of set value. So this will just grab whatever's in there. I'll make this a rather unintelligent program. We won't check to see if there's actually anything set, or just try to load it. Use that wx image again, but this time we're going to pass it the file path that was provided. And we'll just set it to bitmap type any because we don't know which, if it's going to be a JPEG or a PNG. I mean, in this case, we've set it to JPEG, but you could set this just to accept.
If you try to, pardon the interruption, if you try to open a PNG, will you get any kind of error or anything? Or otherwise, what is that wildcard doing?
Okay, let's go fix this before I get too far. All right.
Yep.
So that wildcard thing, as right now, it's only going to show me JPEG files.
Oh, as options.
Yeah, it won't even show me PNG files. It only shows JPEGs. So that's kind of a filter. If I set this to star.star, then it would show all the files in there.
Got it.
So this could actually just be bitmap type JPEG, and you'd be fine. But for future improvements, you could go back and change it so this could accept, you know, JPEGs, PNGs, bitmaps, whatever. And then you'd want to have this part set to bitmap type any. All right. So we've got our image control. We want to set the bitmap. We can say bitmap to our new image that we just loaded. And now that it's loaded, you need to refresh the screen, the control, or the panel, I mean. So that'll actually show the image correctly. If you don't do that, you might see some like weird, some kind of like flashing, or just like weird little glitchy things. So definitely want to call refresh after you reset a bitmap. And we also need to make this on browse call that. So if they've hit OK, it needs to call load image. All right. See if that works the way we want it to work. Just grab this. Okay, and there it is.
Nice.
Loads it right up.
And then if you browse again, could you just keep reloading images here?
Yep. So let's grab a different one. You can see this one didn't resize. So that's like more code we could add to it so it would resize it correctly. I think if we add a...
would it be simple enough just to do that real quick, or is it
self-layout? Self.layout. Let me try that quick.
Well, it resizes the...
Yeah, it resized the image. Interesting.
Cool, though people can play with it.
Yeah, you can play with it. I think the thing you have to be careful of is you need to set a bound so that it can't expand beyond the height of your screen.
Right.
So I don't have that code handy right now, but
No problem.
I know that that's one of the things I had to play with. So I've actually have code in the actual version. I'll just switch to it, where I check and scale stuff. So you can
Nice.
grab the image width and height, and then you can scale it appropriately so that you don't have goofy issues.
Got it. And then
Again,
what function is that in? This is in the same function where you load image?
Yeah,
Got it. Yeah.
I load image. Yeah, I just grab it and then I go do that. Oh yes, and I was going to show you what this looks like on Windows and Linux. So if I run this over here, you can see this looks more window-like. It's kind of the Windows 10 buttons along the top. Everything loads up pretty much the same way. There's some deprecation warning over here that you don't have to worry about. But
right. Nice.
Then over on Linux land, it's got the Linux widgets, and everything on there looks, the way you'd expect it to look. I don't think I have any pictures on here. Oh yeah, I do.
Sweet.
So,
is that your book there, Python 101?
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, well, I think that's a good start. You can play with that code if you want. Now I'll give it to you to upload.
Perfect. Yeah. So we will we'll be uploading this to a GitHub repo on github.com/CodingNomads. There'll be a repo on there called Tech Talks. And then I'll label this as image viewer with wxPython. And this is really cool. It's definitely a great. It's piques my imagination, right? Of all the cool things that you could immediately kind of start doing with this, right? Just like you said, if you wanted to make a kind of a screensaver or an kind of an image slideshow viewer, et cetera, you could do this pretty quickly. Like I imagine, one of the things that you could potentially do is make it so that you're selecting a folder, and then in that folder you could pull all the images into an array, for instance, and you could have like a photo library, right? Or you could show them all in grid view, or you could kind of scroll through them and just reset the image, for each image in the array.
There's a wxPython demo you can get that has some of those features built into our widget. So it'll actually load up everything and create thumbnails for you and put them on in kind of a list box type thing.
Nice.
That you can then scroll through.
Cool. Do you have any recommendations as we kind of start playing with this? Like, what are some next steps that you would recommend people beyond, once they understand what we've done here and they've got it running locally, beyond kind of just getting creative and saying, what do I want to do next? Like, what are some next steps and or maybe tips or warnings that you might be able to share with us about for people who are kind of trying to take the next step?
Well, when I look at this, I'm like, this is a really plain application.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I would probably do is I would add my own little features to it. Like I'd add like maybe a toolbar here, so I could just click an open button or do like file open.
Okay.
Just kind of make it look more nice and professional that way.
Mm-hmm.
You can add a status bar here, so you can put your whatever image is loaded in the status bar rather than in a text control.
And so
I have,
to add like a file button to the top where you would say file open. What did you call that? That's a menu bar?
Yes, that's a menu bar.
Okay, nice.
So yeah, you can have like a toolbar or a menu bar added to it.
Perfect.
It just make it look much more like a real application.
And then what was the library that you were saying you could use in conjunction with this to make your own photo editor?
Yes, you could use the Pillow library,
Pillow.
Pillow. It's a Python imaging library for Python 3, basically.
Nice.
I think when you install wxPython, it'll actually install it as a prerequisite.
Oh, cool. Pip will? Yes. Nice. Well, great. I mean, now everybody knows how to build their own Photoshop application.
Yep,
or at least the first few steps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mike. One last thing that I'll ask before you send this my way, would you mind just adding a couple of inline comments just to kind of tell people what it is that you're doing? And it doesn't need to be every single line, but just kind of a couple little inline comments. And then, yeah, send it my way and we'll put it up on GitHub and we'll share it with everybody. And this was super cool and what I really appreciate when I learn these new things is you would think it would be so much more complicated to build a desktop, and right now it's not really an application. I mean, it is. It's a widget. It's a small application, but to build a desktop application with windows and controls so simply that just automatically works across all, primary operating systems. The fact that you did this all in less than 50 lines of code or so is pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. I really like how easy it is to just pop it out there.
Nice. Cool. Well, anything else you'd like to share with us before we let you get on with your day?
Not really. I just really appreciate your time, and I think you guys are doing a great job.
Well, right back at you, Mike. And I'm also gonna add some links to some of your content in Real Python, as well as some of the books that you've written and your blog. It's all great content, and I really appreciate you sharing your time and your knowledge with us. And have a great day. And anybody, if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send them to us at Coding Nomads, or just leave a comment. If you're watching this in YouTube, feel free to leave a comment below. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mike, and have a great day.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please let us know by liking and subscribing. If there's another topic that you'd like to learn more about, leave us a comment. We would love to hear from you. And if you want to become a coding pro, visit our website at codingnomads.co. See you next time.